Jumanji, The Next Level, directed by Jake Kasdan, starring The Rock, Jack Black, Karen Gillan, Kevin Hart, Danny DeVito, and Danny Glover. It's the follow-up to Welcome to the Jungle, which came out 2 years ago, with a new take on the classic Jumanji, modernizing the board game from the Robin Williams film into a video game, which sucks people in. I actually saw the previous one not that long ago, I think it was a couple of weeks back, with low expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable it was. Sure, it's just a light popcorn flick, but that's what it was aiming to be. It manages to be funny and engaging throughout, and it has that marvelous performance of Jack Black playing a teenage girl. Since the film was quite a financial success, we're back to doing another one. The setup this time around is that the kids from the previous film are supposed to have a reunion of sorts, but Spencer does not show up. So they all go to his house to try and find him, and in the basement they stumble upon the game console with Jumanji plugged in. They figure Spencer must have been sucked into the game somehow, again, for some reason. So they also plug in to try and save him. The thing is, Bethany gets left behind, and the game instead pulls two old men that are currently in the house as well. Spencer's granddad, played by Danny DeVito, and his old friend Danny Glover. So they find themselves in the game again, although with slightly changed characters. So Danny DeVito becomes The Rock, Danny Glover becomes Kevin Hart, Fridge, the black teenager, becomes Jack Black, and Martha is once again Karen Gillan. They all set off to find Spencer and beat the game, which, as it quickly turns out, has a different storyline and locations this time around, after all. And meanwhile, Bethany tries to get help in the outside world. So, I was watching the film, and initially I felt like it was going to be a massive downgrade from the previous one. Not only do we lose Jack Black's Bethany, but the whole thing seems like a clunky rehash of the previous stuff. The setup feels a bit forced after all the events of the last film and the growth that the characters underwent. The initial area and the explanations that they're in the video game are kind of boring because we've been here before, we've done this exact same thing before. So I was on the fence. I had this inner critical voice inside of me that was listing all those things that were not that great. But then as the film went on, I realized that the voice was getting quieter and quieter, and instead, I found myself smiling all the time, particularly in the third act, where the movie really picks up. I was just enjoying the hell out of it. And so I think those initial criticisms, while still valid, shouldn't really matter in the case of this film. It is very honest with what it is, an easy, enjoyable popcorn flick. So I should judge it for that specific thing, for how much fun it gave me. And actually, it was quite a lot, I have to admit. I think that the humor really lands. I think that perhaps seeing the reactions to Jack Black last time around, other actors tried to up their game as well. And so both The Rock and Kevin Hart are much more enjoyable and much funnier than in the previous film. The game itself actually gets more creative and has new mechanics, new locations, new set pieces, which are all cool in their own way. I mentioned the third act already. I think it's much better than the respective third act in the previous film. It manages to feel like an actual crowning moment, the biggest set piece of them all, but at the same time manages to juggle all the characters really efficiently and gives all of them something important to do. There is also an actress that shows up at one point, and I want to say who it is because that's been kept a secret in the trailers for good reason. So I won't say who, I won't say in what capacity, just that someone shows up, okay? And she steals the show. She's just magnetically terrific every time she's on screen and adds something new and fresh and wonderful to the mix. And I think that freshness, despite my initial fears of redoing the same exact thing over and over again, is why the film manages to work. It takes a familiar sandbox but adds new toys to it, and it changes things around. And most importantly, it has its heart in the right place and is still really entertaining. And that is exactly what I hoped it would be, and it gave me that. So honestly, that's good enough for me.